Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry. Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the lovely pleasure in the virtual studio of Jennifer Norman, the Solutions Director at XMA with me. How are we doing, Jen?
Hi, good, thank you.
Thanks so much for seeing me. Thanks for assisting me. So, obviously, as you know, the first contestant, if you like, in the virtual studio is yourself. Because what's been happening is that the new series of Channel Chat. I asked the listeners what they wanted to talk about, and it came up about women in channel or women in tech, mainly because of the festival next month. So, I really wanted to kick off with you straight away. Is the festival's been going for 2 or 3 years? I think I'm right. Yeah, the last 2 or 3 years. And whilst it's been great, I think, celebrating people who are in technology already and getting awards in technology, does that actually get the message out for people that aren't in technology to come into the industry? And I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that.
Well, so you're right. And celebrating women in IT and celebrating women who are in technology right now is obviously the first starting point, and the thing that we needed to do to start awareness really of the need for gender diversity within technology. So you're right, it doesn't necessarily address the pipeline, and we do need to do more to get the message out there to other industries and to young girls and young women coming through from university that actually there are careers in technology, and there are really interesting and really rewarding careers in technology that they may not have considered when they might not have done a computer science degree or a degree related to technology within university.
Yeah, and on that subject, obviously there's lots of it. It's widely debated about STEM subjects for females, and it's, you know, we need to do more in universities and we need to do more in schools. And I know mentioned earlier you do sort of stuff in schools, you said, and we've recently done something with Brunel University to try and get that message out there. But I'm also talking about people that aren't or weren't interested in technology and didn't do any of those subjects. How do you think we can get those types of individuals, maybe the 19, 20, 21-year-olds that haven't gone to university, aren't studying degrees, aren't studying tech, maybe aren't interested in tech at all? How do we get those sort of individuals into our industry?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting and tricky thing to achieve, isn't it? Because I think what we're probably going to need is some role models and a lot of profile and a lot of building awareness and building public profiles of what these women do and what these careers that they have are in the technology industry. And perhaps maybe their backgrounds as well, and where they've come from and the routes that they took, in order to let people know that you don't have to have come through a traditional route in order to work in technology. You don't have to really, really like pulling PCs and servers apart with a screwdriver in order to have a career in technology. That's not necessarily the sole skill required in order to work in technology. You don't necessarily need to have a background in coding. You don't necessarily need to have a background in engineering. There are so many other skills that are so valuable to the technology industry, and so many backgrounds that provide those skills that you don't need to have come from a traditional technology background in order to have a career in technology now. So we do need to do more about public awareness, and we do need to do more perhaps on social media platforms around building profiles and building awareness of women that are in technology now and the routes that perhaps that they took.
Yeah, because, for instance, am I right? You didn't have a traditional route into technology at all, did you? Because there's no way you were sort of making sure you're doing a degree in, or you loved coding or whatever it was. So talk about how you actually got into the industry.
So to try and condense the story, and I'm going back quite a while now, so I'm going back nearly 25 years. But so I was intending to be a professional dancer. And that was the career that I had chosen, and that was the route that I was taking. And certainly 25 years ago, those careers were very much written for you. There was a plan in place. You know, you would go and train here, you would go and work on the stage, and you would have a job on the stage, and then you would go into teaching or choreography of some sort, and you very much had a predefined career mapped out for you. And unfortunately, during training, I was injured, and I suffered an injury to my knee. And despite many operations and physiotherapy, I was told I'd have to choose between dancing and actually just walking. So I had very much a very difficult decision to make at a relatively young age, in my late teens, in my very late teens, and obviously as a young girl, I was devastated and I was mortified, and that was the only thing that I'd ever really thought that I would do in my life had just been sort of taken away from me. So I did what every 19-year-old would do, and I sat in my bedroom and sulked about it for quite some time, until my dad came in actually and said to me, "Are you about done with this? You know, you've been sulking here for a good few months now. Shouldn't you be doing something else by now?" And he asked if I would come and help at his office. And my dad worked for a components company, and he worked for a company that manufactured circuit boards and PC components. And at the time, that was terminal based. You know, we were talking back in the days when they were terminals. So I went and helped out at their office, and I was covering for someone's holiday leave, and my dad said to me, "Look, just come into the office, just help me out. You'd be doing me a massive favour. I've got this idea that I want to sort of get going, and I need someone to come and help. You can sit at a desk and put your leg on a box under the desk," because I was still recovering from operations. And just come and help me out and do me a favour, is basically what he was saying, to try and get me out of the house and stop sulking. Give me something else to do. So I did. I went into their office and had a look at this idea that he had, that he wanted to get off the ground. And as it turned out, he had this idea, which he was calling a swap out service, which was the companies that they were contracted to supply terminals and keyboards and mice to. He wanted to offer them a service where every time they had a failure, they would phone up and log a call for a replacement unit, and then we would ship out the replacement unit, bring the faulty one back into stock, get it repaired, and put back into the stock, onto the shelves into stock. And that was his idea for a swap out service, which is ultimately what would now be called a help desk. And he wanted me to help him get this going by answering the phone. And as I started answering the phone more and more, I realised that I was trying to compete with the problem. So when people were phoning up and trying to report a problem, I was trying to diagnose the problem and trying to figure out what the problem was before either someone told me or before we got that part back in and it was diagnosed in the factory. And I realised that every time I got it right, I was like, yes, I won. Jen against the machine. Jen won.
Brilliant.
I won. And I realised that actually I was really enjoying that, and I really liked competing with the inanimate objects. And that was the thing that was really getting me excited about coming into work every day. So what I ended up doing after that was up and running. I ended up taking a bit of a rubbish office job for a couple of years and put myself back through college in the evenings. And so I was working in the office during the day and working in a pub in the evenings to fund my college course. And I went and did a year at college in the evenings and got what was a GMVQ at the time, and then got my first job on a help desk.
Do you think, you mentioned there that almost like Gen V the machine there, do you think you have to have a competitive streak to even succeed in technology? Because you obviously been, you know, almost like a professional dancer, you must have been pretty competitive and pretty determined person to be able to sort of do that career anyway or push through it. And you seem like you're quite competitive. So do you think women have to be competitive to sort of succeed in IT sales?
No, not at all. Possibly within sales, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about sales, that's generally a competitive environment anyway. You know, I don't think there's any you know, gender difference there. If you want to work in sales, you've got to be competitive. But certainly on the technical side, what it wasn't necessarily, I mean, yes, I liked being competitive with what I was calling, you know, the inanimate objects, and I've got no need to compete against another person. You know, I don't need to, you know, put me on a track, and I don't need to compete in the 100 meters, but I did like competing against something inanimate. But that was very much me, and I think the skills that I utilized later on was actually more just empathy. Right. And because and that's not necessarily again, that's not a gender thing. I tended to use empathy, or I tended to realize I was using empathy because what I really wanted to do was help the person who had the problem, because nobody's ever telling you they've got a problem because it doesn't matter. Everybody's always reporting a problem or talking about a problem or talking about a challenge because it matters. And that, again, was the next part of the puzzle for me, was working out what made me passionate and what drove me. And the thing that drove me was helping the people.
Okay. Do you think this isn't going to be a popular question, because there's a lot of discrimination in the market, and it's a fact. There is a lot of discrimination in the market about maybe parents or mums returning to work, i.e. they've had a year off, they've had 2 years off, a baby or whatever, they've made a conscious decision, and when they come back, they're almost told that they have to go back to the bottom of the ladder. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's active discrimination against, I'm not saying single mothers, I'm just saying mothers in general, who actually go and have a baby, but then they're actually told, not just recruiters, it could be anyone, you've actually got to go and start at the bottom of the ladder again, even if they've parred their career.
Yeah, and you know, that's a popular perception, and it is one that I personally am really passionate about dissipating, because it doesn't exist. And even though, if I go back to when my son was born and I was looking to come back to work, I genuinely had that perception for myself.
Did you?
Yeah, I genuinely assumed, and not that anybody told me, but I genuinely assumed that having had a year out of the industry, I would just have to start again from scratch. You know, and my poor husband at the time was desperately trying to support me through that and lift my spirits, thinking that I was just going to have to start all over again. I was going to have to go back to sort of help desk and first line and work my way all the way back up again. Yeah, and, you know, it was actually crazy, and that's certainly, you know, not anybody, you know, like I say, I had that perception myself, and as it turns out, when I actually got my first job, going back after having had my son, as it turns out, I ended up in an architecture role, and that was my first architecture role. So it was just a ridiculous perception that I just assumed I would have to start again. And when I actually went back and when I started my job, I was like, oh God, what was I thinking? You know, nothing's changed. Yeah. You know, I mean, yes, the version numbers have changed. And, you know, the places where I click on stuff, you know, potentially to get menus has changed. But largely, everything is still the same. And I haven't just suddenly, nobody's come at me with a neuralizer. You know, I haven't, you know, Men in Black style. Nobody told me to forget everything I learned for the last, you know, 15 years. So I honestly, I don't know why I thought that. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's a perception that exists, and I'd love to just make that disappear, because it really, you're having a year out to have a baby really isn't a problem at all.
What advice would you give to a mother returning to work after a year or 18 months out, who's got that perception? They're just thinking, oh, well, I've lost some skills, or I'm not as valuable to the market as I once was. What advice would you give them when sort of applying for jobs?
So the first one is going to be stop. Take a good hard look at what you've just done. You know, you've achieved so much in your career already. Yeah. You haven't forgotten that. Let's not, you know, let's not throw that away. You don't need to throw that away. You just need to start applying for jobs. And you just need to start applying for jobs and show everybody that what you're capable of, and show people what you're worth. Yeah. And the jobs are there, and the people are there who are willing to give you the opportunities, to take them. Don't give up on those opportunities.
And again, it's sort of a similar question. What would you say to the employers that are sort of thinking, oh, well, you know, Jane Bloggs has been out of the market for 18 months. She might not be as valuable to me as she was sort of 2 years ago. And obviously there might be that perception from the candidate that they might not feel as confident that they've got those skills. What would you say to the employers that are maybe discriminating against those candidates and not seeing some of the talent?
Well, I mean, discrimination in any form is just not okay. And certainly conscious discrimination is absolutely not okay. There is no logical reason why a mother is going to work any less harder, know less, learn less. It just, you know, when you put it like that, it's completely irrational. You know, why would you assume that a mum who wants to come back to work, who is actively looking to return to work, would work less, be less dedicated, try less, learn less? You know, you just, if someone is actively looking to return to work, they're looking to dedicate their working life and their career to someone. So, you know, don't discriminate. Absolutely. Don't discriminate. Consciously or unconsciously, don't discriminate.
Absolutely. What advice would you give Jen, who was maybe someone with a similar background to yourself? Maybe they're a young girl or a young female working in a bar, or they've been working in customer service, etc., but they don't really know the jobs available in the tech industry. But, you know, someone maybe mentions that they'd love to get involved. What advice would you give them to sort of try and kick off a career in technology?
Oh, apply. Particularly help desk, first line, anything like that. Honestly, and I know from when I was working in a pub, if you can work in a pub in a town centre on a Friday, Saturday night, then you are
yeah, absolutely. Because women in tech doesn't mean just tech or sales roles, does it? You know, there's other departments crying out for females in their departments, whether that be customer services, whether it be purchasing, HR, or marketing, whatever it is. How can we sort of get to educate the market on more roles that are available to those females as well? Again, that maybe thought tech was just, I don't know what coding is about, I can't go into technology. Because there's definitely that perception out there. Technology, you've got to be really good at computers, I don't want to go into it.
Yeah, I'd love to. That's another area that I'd love to be able to see expanded. And certainly when I'm going to schools, colleges, and universities and talking to students there, I don't even mention coding. And that's not because there's anything wrong with coding. It's just that there are a lot of programs out there around getting girls into coding. There are a lot of really successful movements around getting girls into coding and young women into coding. So those movements are already there, and they're very well publicized. I'd love to see more movements and more publicity around other careers and other job roles and other areas that exist in technology companies other than coding and programming. Because coding and programming is great, and it's obviously a large part of technology, but there are so many other aspects to working in technology. So one of the things is, yes, to answer your exact question, more needs to be done in that sort of 16 to 18 and 16 to 21 even age group in schools, colleges and universities around publicising the breadth of careers that are available.
Yeah. My last couple of questions, Jen. Gender pay. Do you think this is an issue in the technology industry or not? Is it prevalent still in the market that, you know, there's a big gap between gender pay? So
that's a really difficult question for me personally to answer, because I honestly don't know. I'd love to say, no, it's not a problem anymore. I can only talk from my own personal experience, and I can genuinely say I have no fear about my current salary and my current role and my current work environment. but that's not to say that it doesn't exist elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I that is a really difficult question for me to answer, because I honestly don't know. But it's not a problem for me at XMA.
No. Okay. One of the questions that I really want to ask you is, do you think that it's well documented that the top jobs are mainly held by males in the tech industry? I'm not sure the exact percentage. I think it's maybe 5% held by women, which is a very low percentage. Do you think now that flexible working and remote working has become a bit more acceptable? And what I mean by that is if a female leader's got a family, she might need to work from home a bit more. Do you think that's going to help close that gap, and more successful females are going to apply for those top jobs and they'll be more available, or do you think it will still be the same?
I do think that so there's almost two separate things there that I'd like to address. So firstly, I do think that the move towards more flexible working or actually just remote working in general that has come about as part of this pandemic allows both men and women to be far more active in their family lives than they might have been able to before. And that, I think, applies to both men and women, because there are many men who would desperately love to be more involved in their children's lives and do the school run in the morning or the school run in the afternoon or whatever. And, you know, there's so many benefits to being able to share that completely. And then clearly where you've got single parents, because this applies to single dads as well as single mums, you know, the ability to be home more. And I'm not going to say, you know, permanently, because I'm sure most people would love to be back in an office and seeing people and seeing colleagues at some point. But for both sides of single parenting, the ability to be home more is going to massively impact everybody's work-life balance. So that's that side of it. And whether that impacts the ability for more women to apply for more senior roles, I don't necessarily think that flexible working will impact that, but I do think that the pipeline of women coming through the technology industry now will eventually address that level and that level of seniority, because at the moment there are fewer women in those top roles and there are fewer women in those senior management roles, but that will get better as more women come through in that pipeline and work their way up.
Yeah, and you know, and the more awareness we can get out there of the roles available, the more women are going to come into the market. That's for sure. My last question for you, Jen, and I just want your opinion on it. Why do you think it is such a low percentage of women in tech for the last 10 years? Why has it happened? Why have we only got 15% in the market for the last 10 years? In fact, it's been the last 20 years, but I've only got data for the last 10 years. Why is it only 15%?
Do you know what? I don't know, and it's something that I would desperately love to see research on, actually, especially having been, or as I am the parent of a young boy. I say young boy, he's just about to turn 13, but as a parent, and having seen my son go through primary school, and having seen and even been involved in some of the STEM work that they've done in primary school, and having seen those workshops and the visits and the sessions that they've done in STEM subjects, I didn't see any difference between the engagement of the girls versus the engagement of the boys. Both the girls and the boys throughout primary school were just as engaged in the STEM subjects, and particularly around science. I saw a lot of engagement from the young girls around the science subjects. And it's baffling, actually, to me to understand that changes somewhere, but that we don't really know where. At what point does that change? Where does that interest sort of die? You know, where does that change throughout their life in secondary school? And I do, because I do believe it happens at secondary school. Something changes somewhere in secondary school. And it might be something along the lines. Maybe we have to do something. Oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud because it sounds so stereotyped. But maybe we need to do something around young girls that says, but you know what? You can like makeup. You can like clothes. You can like posting pouting selfies on Instagram and TikTok. You can do those things and still have a career in technology.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
because you want to work in a STEM subject, just because you want to do engineering, just because you're interested in physics or you're interested in technology, doesn't mean that you don't like clothes, hair and makeup. You know, it doesn't mean that you can't spend hours making TikTok videos with your friends doing each other's hair. You know, you can still do those things and still be interested in STEM subjects.
Jen, great. Look, you've been a fantastic guest. If anyone wants to reach out to you directly, can they reach out on LinkedIn?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Any questions?
Perfect. And obviously, good luck at the awards next month.
Thank you.